Hey everyone, before we dive into this wild corporate tale, please hit that subscribe button to join our community and never miss a story. The gala was in full swing, chandeliers sparkling, champagne flowing, and the air thick with ambition. I'd spent months nurturing my biggest client, a tech mogul named Clara Evans, who was set to sign a multi-million-dollar deal with our firm. She trusted me, and I'd poured my heart into every pitch, every late-night email, every strategic meeting. Tonight, I was supposed to seal the deal during our private chat at the gala. My colleague, Mark, knew this. He'd overheard me prepping for it in the office. He was charming, sure, but his work was sloppy, and he'd always envied my client list. I spotted him across the room, flashing his signature grin at Clara. Something felt off, but I brushed it aside, focusing on my goal. The night was mine to shine, or so I thought. As I approached Clara, Mark was already there, laughing too loudly, his hand on her arm. My stomach churned as I caught snippets of their conversation. My pitch, my ideas, my deal. He was stealing my client right in front of me. I froze, my heart pounding, betrayal sinking in like a knife. This wasn't just business. It was personal. I forced a smile, joining their conversation, but Clara's eyes were locked on Mark. He was spinning my strategy as his own, claiming credit for weeks of my research. I tried to interject, but he cut me off with a slick joke, and Clara laughed. My mind raced. How could I let this happen? I'd built this relationship from scratch, meeting Clara at a conference last year. We'd bonded over shared goals, and I'd tailored every proposal to her vision. Mark had no part in it, yet here he was, hijacking my success. I glanced at the senior manager, Ms. Larson, standing nearby, observing the room. She was the key to promotions, and I knew she'd be watching tonight. Mark's betrayal wasn't just about Clara, it was about my future. I felt the weight of every late night I'd sacrificed for this deal. I couldn't let him win. My palms were sweaty, but my resolve hardened. I needed a plan, and fast. I excused myself, pretending to grab a drink, but really, I needed space to think. The gala's noise faded as I stepped onto the balcony, the city lights sprawling below. Mark's move wasn't just bold, it was calculated. He'd always been opportunistic, but this was a new low. I replayed our office interactions, his casual questions about my clients, his friendly interest in my strategies. It was clear now. He'd been planning this for weeks. Clara was my ticket to a promotion, and he knew it. My phone buzzed with a text from a coworker, Mark's telling everyone he landed Evans. Rage surged through me, but I couldn't lose control. I had to outsmart him. Ms. Larson respected evidence, not charm. I needed to expose Mark without looking petty. The gala was my stage, and I had to act tonight. I took a deep breath, the cool air sharpening my focus. Back inside, the gala was a blur of suits and smiles, but my eyes were on Mark. He was still glued to Clara, gesturing animatedly as she nodded. I knew I couldn't confront him directly. It'd look desperate. Instead, I approached a junior colleague, Sarah, who'd helped me with Clara's portfolio. She confirmed Mark had asked her for my client notes last week, claiming it was for team collaboration. That was my first piece of evidence. I needed more. I scanned the room for allies, people who'd seen my work with Clara firsthand. My mentor, Tom, was near the bar, and he'd been in on every meeting with her. I pulled him aside, explaining Mark's stunt. Tom's face darkened. He'd never liked Mark's shortcuts. He agreed to back me up if I made a move. The clock was ticking. Clara was about to leave with Mark for a private chat. I had to act now. I approached Ms. Larson, my heart hammering but my voice steady. She was sipping champagne, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. I started with small talk, easing her into the conversation. Then I pivoted, mentioning Clara's deal and my months of work on it. Ms. Larson raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. I casually noted that some team members had been inspired by my strategy. Her interest piqued, and I knew I had her attention. I didn't name Mark yet, I needed to build my case. I mentioned specific milestones, the late-night revisions, the tailored data analytics, the pitch Clara loved. Ms. Larson nodded, her expression unreadable. I could feel Mark's eyes on me from across the room. He sensed something was up. Good. Let him sweat. I was laying the groundwork, and he had no idea what was coming. I excused myself from Ms. Larson and made my way to Clara. Mark was still there, but his charm was faltering under my presence. I smiled warmly at Clara, asking about her thoughts on the deal. She praised the strategy, unaware she was describing my work. I gently corrected her, saying I'd been thrilled to develop those ideas for her. Mark's face tightened, but he didn't dare interrupt. I mentioned a specific report I'd sent her last month, one Mark couldn't possibly know. Clara's eyes lit up. She remembered it. I was reclaiming my narrative, piece by piece. Mark tried to pivot, but I kept the focus on details only I could know. Clara started addressing me directly, and Mark's confidence cracked. I caught Ms. Larson watching us, her expression sharp. This was my moment to escalate. I suggested we all discuss the deal with Ms. Larson, together. Clara agreed, and we walked toward Ms. Larson, Mark trailing reluctantly. My pulse raced, but I kept my composure. This was no longer just about Clara, it was about exposing Mark's deceit. Ms. Larson greeted us warmly, but her eyes were on me, sensing the tension. I started by thanking Clara for her trust in my work, emphasizing my with subtle confidence. Then I turned to Mark, asking him to share his contributions to the deal. His smile faltered, and he mumbled vague generalities. I pressed him politely about specific data points only I'd worked on. He stumbled, his charm useless against hard facts. Clara frowned, sensing something was off. Ms. Larson's gaze was piercing now, and I knew she saw through him. I had to push further, but carefully. One wrong move, and I'd look like the aggressor. I pulled out my phone, showing Clara an email chain with her team, proof of my work. Mark hadn't been copied on any of it. His face paled as Clara scrolled through, her expression shifting from confusion to realization. I explained how I'd built the strategy from scratch, tailoring it to her company's needs. Mark tried to interject, claiming he'd collaborated, but I had another ace, Sarah's testimony. I called her over, and she confirmed Mark had accessed my notes without permission. Ms. Larson's silence was deafening. She was letting Mark hang himself. Clara turned to him, her voice cold, asking why he'd claimed my work. He stammered, his excuses unraveling. The room seemed to shrink around us, the gala's noise fading. I'd exposed him, but I wasn't done yet. I needed to seal this victory. Ms. Larson finally spoke, her tone calm but cutting. She asked Mark to explain his role in the deal. He floundered, repeating weak claims about teamwork. I stayed silent, letting his words fall flat. Clara, now visibly annoyed, confirmed she'd only worked with me directly. Ms. Larson nodded, her eyes flicking to me with a hint of approval. I seized the moment, outlining my vision for Clara's deal, proving my expertise. Mark was sidelined, his credibility in tatters. The senior manager thanked Clara for her time and pulled me aside. She didn't say much, but her nod told me everything. I'd earned her respect. Mark slunk away, avoiding my gaze. The gala continued, but for me, the night was a triumph. I'd taken back what was mine. As the gala wound down, Clara approached me, apologizing for the confusion. She confirmed the deal was mine to close, and we set a meeting for Monday. I thanked her, my confidence restored. Mark was nowhere to be seen, likely licking his wounds. My co-workers whispered about the showdown, and Tom gave me a proud nod. Ms. Larson's approval was the real prize, though. She'd seen my strength under pressure. I'd turned betrayal into opportunity, and it felt damn good. The city lights glittered outside, mirroring my newfound clarity. Mark's stunt had backfired, and I'd come out stronger. This wasn't just about one deal, It was about my place in the company. I'd proven I could handle the game and win. The night was mine, and I wasn't looking back. The next morning, I woke up still buzzing from the gala. My inbox was flooded with messages from coworkers who'd heard about the showdown. They called it legendary. Mark's fall from grace was the talk of the office. I didn't gloat, but I couldn't help smiling. Clara's deal was back on track, and I was ready to finalize it. Still, I knew Mark wouldn't go down quietly. He'd always been a sore loser, and I braced for retaliation. At the office, I noticed his desk was empty. He'd called in sick. Typical. I focused on my work, prepping for the Monday meeting with Clara. Ms. Larson emailed me, requesting a debrief on the deal. This was my chance to solidify her trust. I spent the day refining my pitch, ensuring every detail was perfect. Mark's absence gave me space to shine, but I stayed vigilant. He'd try something again. I just didn't know when. Monday arrived, and my meeting with Clara went flawlessly. She signed the contract, praising my dedication and professionalism. It was a multi-million-dollar win, the biggest of my career. Back at the office, Ms. Larson called me into her office. She didn't mention Mark directly but commended my handling of the gala. She hinted at a promotion, saying she valued employees who protected their work. My heart soared. This was the break I'd been working toward. I thanked her, keeping my cool, but inside, I was elated. Word spread fast, and co-workers congratulated me, some joking about Mark's sick day. I heard whispers he was meeting with HR. His stunt had consequences. I didn't know the details, but I didn't care. My focus was on the future, not his mistakes. The victory felt sweeter knowing I'd earned it through strategy, not spite. By midweek, Mark was back, but his swagger was gone. He avoided me, sticking to his desk and keeping conversations short. I heard he'd been reprimanded by HR for unethical behavior. The office dynamic had shifted. People respected me more, and Mark's influence waned. I didn't rub it in. I didn't need to. My work spoke for itself. Clara's deal was generating buzz, and Ms. Larson tasked me with leading a new project. It was a high-profile client, a step up from anything I'd done before. I dove in, energized by the opportunity. Mark's betrayal had lit a fire under me, pushing me to work harder. I realized his stunt had been a gift in disguise. It forced me to step up. The office was my battlefield now, and I was ready for anything. As weeks passed, the gala faded into office legend, but its impact lingered. My promotion was confirmed, and I moved into a corner office with a view. Clara's deal brought in record revenue, cementing my reputation. Mark, meanwhile, was on thin ice. He'd been reassigned to smaller accounts, his charm useless without credibility. I didn't waste energy on him. I had bigger goals. Ms. Larson became my mentor, guiding me toward leadership roles. I started mentoring junior colleagues, like Sarah, who'd helped me that night. The office felt different now, more like a team than a battleground. I'd learned to navigate corporate games without losing my integrity. Mark's betrayal had tested me, but it also shaped me. I was stronger, sharper, and ready for the next challenge. Looking back, I realized the gala wasn't just about one deal, it was a turning point. I'd faced betrayal and came out on top, not by sinking to Mark's level, but by playing smarter. My confidence grew, and so did my ambitions. I started pitching bolder ideas, taking risks I wouldn't have before. Ms. Larson noticed, giving me more responsibility. Clara referred me to other clients, expanding my network. The office respected me not just for the win, but for how I handled it. I didn't gloat or seek revenge. I let the truth do the talking. Mark's career stalled, but mine soared. I'd turned a setback into a springboard, and it felt incredible. The corporate world was tough, but I was tougher. I was ready for whatever came next. One evening, I ran into Mark at a company happy hour. He looked deflated, his usual bravado gone. He tried to make small talk, but I kept it brief. I didn't hate him. He dug his own grave. I'd heard he was looking for jobs elsewhere, his reputation tarnished. I wished him well, silently, but my focus was on my own path. The happy hour was lively, with co-workers toasting my promotion. Sarah pulled me aside, thanking me for mentoring her. It felt good to give back, to build others up the way Tom had supported me. The gala had taught me more than strategy, it showed me the power of integrity. I'd won not just a deal, but respect. That was worth more than any client. The night ended with laughter and clinking glasses, a far cry from the gala's tension. Months later, Clara invited me to her company's launch event for the project we'd closed. It was a glitzy affair, not unlike the gala, but this time I felt at ease. I was no longer the underdog fighting for my place. Clara introduced me to her board as the mastermind behind the deal. I smiled, accepting the praise, but my mind flashed back to that night. Mark's betrayal had been a catalyst, pushing me to prove myself. I thanked Clara, knowing this success was mine alone. Ms. Larson was there too, watching proudly. She'd become my biggest advocate, and I hers. The event was a celebration of hard work, not just mine, but the team I'd built. I'd learned to trust others, to lead with clarity. The corporate game wasn't easy, but I'd found my stride. Back at the office, I was tasked with leading a cross-departmental initiative. It was a challenge, but I was ready. My experience with Mark had taught me to anticipate moves, to protect my work without paranoia. I built stronger alliances, shared credit where it was due, and stayed transparent. The team respected my approach, and our projects thrived. I heard Mark had left the company, taking a lower role elsewhere. I didn't celebrate his downfall. It wasn't about him anymore. My focus was on building a legacy, not settling scores. Ms. Larson hinted at a C-suite track for me, a goal I'd never dared dream before. The gala had been a battle, but it forged me into a leader. I was no longer just playing the game, I was shaping it. Reflecting on that night, I realized how close I'd come to losing everything. If I'd let Mark's stunts slide, I might have faded into the background. Instead, I fought for what was mine, not with anger, but with precision. The gala taught me to trust my instincts, to act decisively. It also showed me the value of allies like Tom and Sarah, who'd had my back. Corporate life was a chessboard, and I'd learned to play like a grandmaster. Every move mattered, every detail counted. I wasn't perfect, but I was prepared. The stakes were higher now, with bigger clients and bigger risks. But I wasn't afraid. I'd faced betrayal and won. Whatever came next, I'd handle it with the same clarity and strength. As the year ended, I looked back on my journey with pride. The gala was a distant memory, but its lessons were etched into me. I'd gone from a betrayed colleague to a respected leader. Clara's deal was just the start. My portfolio was growing, and so was my influence. Ms. Larson invited me to a strategy retreat with senior leadership, a sign of bigger things to come. I walked into the retreat with confidence, knowing I'd earned my seat. The corporate world was still cutthroat, but I was no longer naive. I'd learned to navigate its waters, to turn setbacks into strengths. Mark's betrayal had been a painful lesson, but it made me who I was. I was ready for the next chapter, whatever it held. The game was on, and I was all in. The strategy retreat was a game changer, a room full of the company's top minds. I presented my vision for the next quarter, and the C-suite listened intently. Ms. Larson praised my insights, cementing my place among the elite. I thought back to the gala, how I'd almost lost it all to Mark's scheming. That night felt like a lifetime ago, but it had shaped every step since. I'd learned to anticipate betrayal, to protect my work with airtight evidence. My new role gave me access to bigger clients, bigger stakes. I was no longer just managing deals, I was shaping the company's future. My team grew, and I mentored them with the same care I'd given Clara's deal. The office buzzed with my name, not as a victim, but as a leader. I'd turned the tables, and it felt incredible. One day, I got an email from Clara, inviting me to speak at an industry conference. She called me a rising star, a title that made me pause. I'd been so focused on surviving the corporate game that I hadn't seen how far I'd come. The conference was a chance to showcase my expertise, to build my brand beyond the company. I prepared meticulously, channeling the same precision I'd used at the gala. My speech was a hit, earning praise from industry leaders. Clara introduced me to new clients, expanding my network further. I realized the gala wasn't just a win, it was a launchpad. Mark's betrayal had forced me to step up, to claim my place. I was no longer in his shadow, or anyone's. The stage was mine, and I was ready to shine. Back at the office, I noticed a shift in how people treated me. Junior colleagues sought my advice, and senior leaders included me in key decisions. I'd become a trusted voice, someone who could handle pressure and deliver results. Ms. Larson pulled me aside, hinting at a potential VP role. It was surreal. 2 years ago, I was fighting to keep one client. Now, I was on track to lead divisions. The gala had been my crucible, burning away my doubts and forging my confidence. I thought about Mark, wondering where he was now. His name rarely came up anymore, a footnote in my story. I didn't wish him ill. He'd been his own worst enemy. My focus was on the future, on building something lasting. As my influence grew, so did my responsibility. I led a team of 10 now, each member handpicked for their drive and integrity. I instilled in them the lessons I'd learned: protect your work, but don't hoard credit. Build alliances, but stay true to your values. The gala had shown me the cost of naivety, and I made sure my team was prepared. We landed another major client, a deal that rivaled Clara's. The office celebrated, and I gave credit to my team's hard work. Ms. Larson watched, her approval clear. I was no longer just a player in the corporate game, I was a coach, shaping the next generation. The gala's sting had faded, replaced by a sense of purpose. I'd turned betrayal into a blueprint for success. One evening, I found myself back at the gala's venue for another event. The chandeliers still sparkled, but the memories hit hard. I could almost see Mark's smug grin, Clara's confusion, Ms. Larson's piercing gaze. That night had been chaos, but it had made me who I was. I walked the room with ease, no longer the anxious underdog. Colleagues greeted me warmly, and clients sought me out. I'd built a reputation, not just for winning, but for doing it right. The event was a success, and I closed another deal on the spot. As I left, I glanced at the balcony where I'd planned my comeback. It felt like a lifetime ago. I smiled, knowing I'd turned a low point into a high. The next year brought new challenges, but I was ready. I led a company-wide initiative, streamlining processes and boosting profits. Ms. Larson nominated me for an industry award, a nod to my growth. I didn't win, but the nomination alone was a milestone. Clara attended the ceremony, cheering me on. We'd become more than client and vendor. We were partners, even friends. I thought back to the gala, how close I'd come to losing her trust. Mark's stunt had been a wake-up call, forcing me to sharpen my skills. I was grateful, in a way, not for his betrayal, but for the strength it gave me. The corporate world was still a jungle, but I'd learned to navigate it. I was no longer just surviving, I was thriving. My team grew stronger, and so did our reputation. We were the go-to group for high-stakes deals, trusted by clients and leadership alike. I made it a point to mentor young talent, especially those who reminded me of my younger self. I shared the gala story, not to boast, but to teach. It was a lesson in resilience, in standing up for your work. My team listened, inspired, and I saw them apply those lessons in their own battles. Ms. Larson retired, but not before naming me her successor as director. The role was daunting, but I was ready. The gala had been my proving ground, and I'd come out stronger. Mark's name was a distant memory, irrelevant to my path. I was building something bigger now, and it felt right. At a company retreat, I was asked to give a keynote on leadership. I told the gala story, framing it as a lesson in integrity and strategy. The room was silent, hanging on every word. I didn't mention Mark's name. I didn't need to. The story wasn't about him. It was about overcoming obstacles, about turning betrayal into triumph. I shared how I'd learned to trust my instincts, to build alliances, to act with precision. The applause was deafening, and I felt a surge of pride. The gala had been a defining moment, but it was just one chapter. I was writing a new story now, one of leadership and impact. My team cheered loudest, and I knew I'd inspired them. The corporate game was tough, but I'd mastered it. As I settled into my director role, I reflected on how far I'd come. The gala felt like a distant dream, but its lessons were part of me. I'd learned to navigate betrayal, to protect my work, to lead with integrity. Clara's deal had been the start, but it led to so much more. I'd built a team, a reputation, a legacy. The corporate world was still cutthroat, but I was no longer afraid. I had allies, experience, and a clear vision. Mark's betrayal had been a spark, igniting my drive to succeed. I didn't dwell on him. He was a footnote, not the story. My focus was on the future, on shaping the company and mentoring the next generation. I was where I belonged, and it felt incredible. Looking ahead, I knew the challenges would keep coming. The corporate world never slowed down, and neither would I. The gala had taught me to stay sharp, to trust myself, to act when it mattered. I'd turned a moment of betrayal into a career-defining win. My team was thriving, my clients were loyal, and my influence was growing. I wasn't just playing the game anymore, I was setting the rules. The chandeliers of that night still sparkled in my memory, a reminder of how far I'd come. I'd faced the worst and come out stronger. Whatever came next, I was ready. The corporate world was mine to conquer, and I was just getting started. Thanks for joining me on this wild ride. If you loved this story, hit that subscribe button to catch more corporate dramas and lessons.